Hello, my friends, and welcome to Postscript. It's nice to have you with us. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and today we have an interview with our dear and old, you're not that old, our dear
Oh,
old,
yes, I am.
our dear old friend, Penny Kelly.
Oh,
Penny Kelly is a author, a seer, an experiencer, a naturopathic physician, and a nice person to boot.
thank
and
you.
she comes to Berkeley Springs here for our transition talks on a regular basis every year, and she'll be here in June, and we're checking in with her here today to see what's on her mind. Hi, Penny.
Hi.
Wonderful to see you.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Hi, it's good to see you. And I hope lots of people will join this transition talk because this transition talk is a transition for people. And that's the way I have organized it and planned it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, let me just say for people who might not be familiar with it, that every month we have a speaker here that comes to Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, our little resort town that's 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore, and they come from all over the world. Frank Jacob, who's part of our team and quartet, will be here in September. Greg Braden will be here the end of in 3 weeks, the 31st of May, and you are coming in June, and
Wow.
all of these are live streamed as well as face to face, real time kind of things, and you can watch the live stream for 6 months afterwards. So it doesn't make any difference where you are, and so it's really a marvelous time. It's a part of our effort of building a community back here, and so we do all kinds of fun things and have dinner with 40 people or whatever, and we're now starting. We're going to start the night before Friday night with take over one of the local taverns and have a happy hour. And so it really turns out to be a wonderful place to find like-minded people, and it's awfully fun to kind of consider and work with all of the big new ideas that come from folks like you. And so, what have you been thinking about, kiddo?
I've been thinking, I think I mentioned it in the recent quartet talk. Maybe not, but there's a hardening going on. That hardening process is really important in our development of consciousness, of courage, of strength, of a willingness to deal with what is. And so I'm at this as I watch this kind of hardening process occurring. What happens when you begin to harden is you become like a rock, and you need that rock. That comes from "Thou art Peter, and upon this rock you can build a new self, a new life, a new world." And you can't build that on sand. It has
Right.
to have a good foundation. And I sense that we're there, we're getting there, and people are beginning to say, you know what, we need something different. We need something better. We need something that works. And so what has been on my mind is really how there are 3 levels of reality that are functional right now. And those they're interacting, and they are how would I say they're the grist for the mill of the new world. And
Mm-hmm.
so as we move forward and watch those interact, there are certain gifts each one of those realities offers, and we want to like cherry pick the best of the old and envision the best of the new to the best of our ability, and really start moving toward a much more expansive consciousness, a much more expansive outlook, and that results in a planetary consciousness, and
Yeah.
that results in a planetary civilization. instead of
Mhm.
a planet full of nations with
Right.
different, I love the differences. I love the cultures, but we can bring all those cultures together as one civilization without giving up the uniqueness of each one
Right.
of those, because each one is like a family. They have family gifts, they have specific outlooks, they have ways of viewing the reality, making it work in their territory. We need that. But we also need the planetary civilization.
Well, you make a very salient point here in that this starts with the individual and the increase in consciousness. And I just suggest to some of our viewers that they check out our last version of episode of Quartet, which we just did yesterday, I guess it was, where you did a very, very insightful and very helpful kind of list of kind of the characteristics that are associated with personal enlightenment. And that's essentially what we're talking about here, is that we're on our way to a new world, but you don't get to a new world unless you think in a different way. You don't see yourself, and you see the larger reality in a different kind of way. And so
yes.
this is going to be very timely and very important. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you're coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it really is necessary, and you can't fool yourself. You can't pretend that you have a different kind of consciousness when you don't, because your gut thinking and your gut intuitional messages are going to be in alignment with the consciousness, and that's your frequency signature right there. So when you have an experience of enlightenment, and there are people that are, they're in my school. I see them all the time in my classes. They've had these amazing experiences, and they're often confused, often like, what is this about? Well, it's about the transformation of your entire the physical body. It isn't just a consciousness change, it's a change in the physical body and the chemistry, because chemistry follows frequency. So when the frequencies change, the consciousness changes, the chemistry changes, the body changes.
Is this
And
anything like crystalline body or something like that? Yeah, I mean, I've heard
yeah,
that term.
yeah, I'm not sure what a crystal and how the people who
Yeah.
came up with that term define that. But what happens over time is that you expand literally the cells of your body, the frequencies.
Sure.
Let's back up a step. The frequencies have to stay in communication with one another so they can interact. So they have to be somewhat close. As the consciousness expands, those frequencies expand a little bit, but they stay in communication. And that is the basis of becoming a nano, of entering a nano state. Okay. If
What's
you
that
have
mean?
a nano state is when the particles separate further, but they stay in electromagnetic contact with one another. In other words, they have enough energy to maintain an energetic contact, and they
Right.
continue to interact. But now, because they're not quite so tightly packed in, other frequencies can flow through. And those become,
So are you talking about elements or molecules or subatomic particles, or what are
yes.
the?
Okay.
Yes, all
So
all of
all
it.
the above. So a little history, a little lesson in electromagnetics. If you have a frequency, it looks like a sine wave. But when you see that, when you watch
That's
that
one way
in,
to look at it. Yeah.
yeah, when you watch that in real time with with your expanded senses, you
Right.
could see that it's not just this flat thing going up and down. It is a spiral that starts at a wide end and spirals down to a little tiny point. And that point then emits a flash, and that flash is some kind of particle. And
Hmm.
those particles then, um, they they are what make us. Okay. We're not really all that solid to begin with. but we're pretty solid.
That sounds like Walter Russell to me. He talks about
Oh,
those spirals that these
yeah.
vortexes come down to something.
Yeah, they do. They do. They make a flash of light. You get a photon of some sort or particle of some sort. And those particles, depending on the arrangement of the frequencies, have different characteristics. And so it's complex. We can't go into all the complexities
Yeah.
of those physics, but eventually the frequencies are interacting and they create other frequencies and they keep creating other frequencies. And you end up with a three-dimensional form.
Mm,
Okay, it's just a region in space. Everybody is a region in space. And
mhm,
that three-dimensional form is pretty tightly packed. We say pretty tightly wound.
mhm,
So when you expand, literally, your frequencies move apart a little bit, and yet they stay in communication. And that allows for all sorts of new characteristics and new kinds of behaviors. These are factors that have to do with physics, plasma physics. But I think if people could just understand that we are becoming less dense.
right.
When I was in high school, we used to say that the slow kids were really dense. Well, that was such an insult. We were all really dense. Now, as we expand, that kind of expansion leads to a change in your consciousness and the way you see things and you begin to see light. You begin to have a very deep and very expansive consciousness. You're no longer watching the surface. You're looking at or aware of all of the factors involved in a particular situation, and you see it all, you hear it all, you know it all. Um, that I don't mean that we're all know-it-alls, but um, you end up with a much more expansive consciousness. Once that occurs, now you begin to say, you begin to see patterns of behavior. And it only takes one time to watch a pattern's outcome. And you say, that was a really good outcome or not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you see that pattern again. You're like,
Sure.
that's not good. I mean, it's learning. It's a learning process. And so as the consciousness changes, the learning changes, all of
Sure.
the outcomes change, and all of the meanings.
Right.
So
And the patterns are events. I mean, the
yes,
thing. Yeah.
they are
The,
people, they are activities, events, big situations, little situations.
right.
Sometimes it's just a flash. Somebody has a flash in which they know something, you
Right.
know, he's going to do something or she's not going to do that, even though she said she was. There'll be this knowing. And those are the kinds of knowings that come with a more expansive consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's really what you need in order to get to where we need to get to, which is a much more expansive awareness of what's been going on, where we're at right now, and where we are going, and what that might mean. And there are all sorts of factors involved in that, and they're not just government. They're not just medical conditions. They're not just your education or who you're married to or how many kids you have or your job. It involves the entire planet and the reality of the planet. What do planets do? What do planets do for a living? And how
Mm,
do they interact with the energies around them? And what are the energies around a planet? They are other planets. And all
sure.
of us, meaning all of our planets, are really held in a family by our sun. We are the children of the sun. I can say it that way.
Or a star. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's our star. And that every so often the star does a micronova. And what literally happens in that micronova is that material gets blasted through in every direction, typically through the region of her family. That's us. What happens is a solar flash. You know, we've talked about that. I'll talk about that a little bit at the transition talk. But essentially, what she does is push her children out further and further. All the planets, when there's a microblast or a micronova, the planets move out away from the sun just a little bit, and the year gets a little longer, and the climate changes just a little. Excuse me. And eventually, you're way away from that sun, and you have a certain amount of time between the microblasts, micronovas, to get yourself to an expanded consciousness, because that consciousness is something, every single thing in the entire existence is looking for energy to promote its existence, to build its existence, to improve its existence, everything. So humans, what are humans? Why are humans? Why do we eat? We're looking for energy. We literally take in and digest the energies of stuff because we want the frequencies in that stuff. And that, there's a lot. It's not a very efficient process at all. But eventually you want to get to where you can take in at least some energies from the space around you and have this consciousness that allows you to direct that. Ever so often, whoops, go ahead. You want to ask?
Well, wait, what you're saying is, it's commonly understood that, as if you move through this process, this consciousness process and so on, you become capable of doing all kinds of new things that you couldn't do before. One of which includes, commonly talked about, is not needing food in the same way, being able to access it from the outside and get.
Right.
I mean, I've known friends that I know you presume you do as well. I've known friends who never ate, like for half a year or more the last time I saw them, in wonderful health, but they are able to assimilate the energy from the larger system.
That's true. I have a friend right in Kalamazoo. I think it's been 7 or 8 years since he's eaten. He just woke up one day and said, I'm not going to eat anymore. That was it. Just that. And he honored that flash of inspiration, and he's doing well. So, so that's part of the process of becoming. And when your planet moves way out there, you don't have the kind of greenery that we have here. And you best know how to access, energy right from space itself, from the milieu that you happen to be surrounded by. So that's, there's a lot of people who have said to me, oh, but I really love ice cream. I know. I'm not going to give up my chicken.
Yeah.
I know. And I understand that. So I think, we're coming to a time where you don't have to, this next step does not involve giving up food. So don't freak out over that. But we have to, we're so close to self-annihilation. We have to do something different. And it's a gentle change. There are specific changes. They lead to a different consciousness. That leads to a whole different outlook. And that leads to a whole different civilization. And we are needing, the next step is becoming a planetary civilization. And maybe we won't be really cohesive, but we'll be much more cohesive and cooperative than we are now. And that's just the next step. How do we get there? What's involved in that?
What do you think will happen to the whole technocracy bunch who are trying to wire everybody down and control it all.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go in this scenario?
Okay. What you're asking requires an understanding that we're moving to a different frequency range of existence. The technocracy crowd can have their own
Sure,
reality system. If
but we're
we
in a
don't want
different
that, we
band.
don't.
It's called a band in radio tech talk.
Exactly. Yeah, we're in a different frequency band. And that is, it just doesn't include all of that technocracy stuff. We
Hmm.
do have amazing technology. And
Mm-hmm.
as each civilization evolves and matures, their technology goes right with them. But the commitment with that technology is do no harm and develop the human along the way. And so the technocracy people, I've looked at them a couple of times and they're legitimate. I shouldn't maybe encourage people to go that way. I don't want to encourage people to go that way, but they are actually pursuing a timeline that will be fruitful down the road for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that if they don't destroy themselves, um, yeah, that will be fruitful, but that's a couple thousand years down the road. And in the meantime, they may decide, yeah, this isn't working very well. Um,
Yeah.
but the technology that and the explorations and the things that they're trying to discover and do will be valuable for the greater family of humanity across the galaxy. So, um, that's it's kind of a hard thing to admit, but
So in the middle of all of this transition, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this. What is your understanding about the archons and this alternative or other dimensional kind of players that are engaged in here?
I don't use the language of archons or jinns or devils or all of that. However, there are humanoid beings and non-human fields of intelligence that are just like us. They have good and bad. And when they're bad, they're really bad.
Mhm.
Okay. Especially if they have developed themselves. They typically they're out there, but they're typically not willing to mess with an aware population. They need people that are not awake, people
Right.
that are immature, easily manipulated, gullible beyond measure. And they take over those people. They just
Mhm.
become slaves. It's not fun, you
Okay.
know. But there are other people across the galaxy who say, no, 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 you're not doing that. And they will keep an eye on populations that are right on the cusp of maturing
All
and
right. So
try to
you're
bring.
making an important point here, and that is that in a sense, you don't have to worry about these guys. They're going to be playing, but they're going to be playing in a different area, a different band, as you've suggested,
Yeah, right.
where it's generating. Typically you used to know Bob Monroe, and he talked
Yeah,
about this energy, this
right.
ragged energy that's produced over there. However however it works,
Yeah,
there is for the direction that we want to go, that
right.
there is essentially there's it's almost like we're not bothering them and they don't care about
Yeah,
us because we're not helping them in any way, and we're not threatening them, because if we
no,
threaten them, then they stand up, and they
that's
defend
right.
themselves.
Yeah,
And so there's this interesting kind of notion, because a lot of folks, friends of mine, who are all concerned about what the present situation and who's going to do what to whom and
I know.
everything. And you say, wait a second, you're going into a different place,
Right.
and it operates in a different kind of way. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Keep going. You're on
no,
a roll there.
well, I know, but I don't want to take your time.
Wow.
Go ahead.
I think you're quite right. I mean, everything you said is just a perfect description. The the people that are a nuisance are kind of like neighbors that don't clean up their yard. You know, they have a mess, and you have a pristine yard, and it bugs you. You know, so it's that kind of energy. They're irritating maybe now and then, but really not. You could move away. You could move to a different neighborhood. That's what we're talking about doing, is
Yeah.
moving to a different neighborhood. And to do that, you have to have a different consciousness. And for a while, we're going to have these three reality systems interacting, and we're going to have to, the people that are aware are aware. So they're going to see what's going on in all three realities. And they're going to, bemoan and complain and worry about getting caught up in something they don't want to be part of. But you just have to hold your center. And that's where that rock comes in. You have
Yeah.
to be clear and firm about what you're doing and where you're going. And you build and you make choices and you invest and you spend time in a way that builds a new reality system. And
Yeah.
that's
By the way, the noise you may hear is that they're working on the roof here and taking the old shingles off. And so, anyway, my apologies, but I I don't have anywhere else to go.
you can barely hear it. I hope it won't
Okay,
show up.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we're headed in a direction that really requires that we become planetary citizens. And that's like one step away from becoming solar system citizens and galactic citizens. And there are people that are saying just a few more steps, and you will be able to be invited to some of the councils, some of the
Yeah.
meetings. People have meetings and councils everywhere. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I'm all about, come on, you guys, let's go. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
what
you really need to lean into this thing because the
right.
otherwise you get swept downstream because the other guys own they have all the money and the computers and the narrative and the
Right.
intelligence community and the media and the politicians and so on and the corporations, and all of them are kind of trying to drive the whole system in a different kind of direction. And so it's really as simple as saying, well, let's go play a different game in a different place.
That's
And
right.
that's easy to say. It's a little a little
Yeah.
harder to do, but
You know,
nevertheless, it gives us the opportunity for the first time, certainly in our lifetimes, and certainly in kind of this recorded history, to literally go off and start and build a new world and build a new reality and in terms that make sense and that are built around a new set of principles and
yes.
concepts and ideas and goals and assumptions. So anyway, I know that you
Uh,
support that and are interested in that, and that's what we're trying to do here at the Arlington Institute.
Yeah. Let me just add that when you start having a change of consciousness, when you're when you start opening up, you're going to feel that. You're going to see things, you're going to hear things you didn't notice before. People often worry, am I doing the right thing? And what does this mean? And what does that mean? It means that you're awakening, that you are becoming an expanded human being. And that's a less dense human being. And the more you become an expanded being, the more information flows through you. The more
Mm-hmm.
information that flows through you, the faster the whole process goes. And
Yeah.
it's really it you will have miracles. I can't even count the number of miracles that I've personally generated, or that stories I've heard from my students, or even from my own family, the expanded family. So yeah, don't think for a moment you're not capable, because you are.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's a central point in here is the notion of community. And however you define that, how broadly you define that, whether it's a global community and you have a mechanism whereby you do community kind of things, you have these friends and relationships and it's a common interest, which is what we're trying to do here at
Yep.
transitionTALK. But
Right.
you also need to do it face to face. You need to have these folks that you can look in their eyes and you know and feel and you
That's
trust
right.
and all of that kind of stuff. So there's an interesting kind of amalgam that's showing up here.
Yeah.
You know that I've talked about the possibility because Martin Armstrong talks about the fact that his computer says that starting in 2027, then the United States breaks apart and there ends up being about 5 new countries in the North America going up to coming together up until 2032. Well, hey, let's build it. We'll take one of those and we'll go.
There's our doorway.
Yeah, that's right. So we can do one of those, but what you got to do is think about almost every aspect of this thing in a different way. That is to say, in this case, is a citizen of a country somehow geographically only geographically related to them, or in this internet virtual kind of environment, can you have people from all over the world that are somehow
That's right.
in the community in a substantial, significant enough way that you can certainly define and say, yes, you're one of our citizens, even though you may live in Japan or someplace.
That is so true. And that really, I think it was Sri Aurobindo who
Mm-hmm.
said, he started building a community in India, southwestern India, maybe. And people said, I can't get there. I can't afford to fly to India. He said, never mind. Get here one time, go home. Even if you can't get here one time, stay in communication. It's a community of consciousness. And I took that up just in a hot second and started with my school, mycocolife.com, and said, okay, let's build a community of consciousness. And my hope is that people come to the school, they learn, they expand their consciousness, and then in their little town, they build those
Mm-hmm.
communities, they build
Yeah.
those networks. And that's
Mm-hmm.
how it works. And the
Yeah, but
networks that are working, they will attract people from networks that aren't working. It's that
right.
simple.
And then with the internet and with some of these new technologies, then you can connect the communities together into this larger, a meta community or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
And there is a working space inside of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a game per se, but there is a synthetic, wonderful. You can build a magnificent kind of experience to where people from all over the world can come together and watch, do a concert, or do any number of things that you otherwise were limited by geography.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is so wonderful. Oh my gosh. And that is the first stage of really becoming telepathic, connecting
Mm-hmm.
over the internet. We have a long way to go, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And this particular Earth human, this version of humanoid, there's lots of versions of humans
Mm-hmm.
across the galaxy, but this particular version has a destiny that says, do not give up your physicality and
Oh.
all of those wonderful senses. So we
Mm.
expand, but a lot of people don't like to have to take care of the physical side of life. It's very demanding. Everybody knows that. Uh, so advanced peoples often say, I'm just going to become light. I don't need physical.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know.
they give up a lot, but that's not our destiny. And that is why we have so much support from other people around the galaxy, or around this part of the galaxy, around this sector, they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, is that, help those people look at their destiny. Holy cow. That is something that is so rare. And I think it's worth going for.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
By the way, when you talk about this kind of synthetic
Yeah.
space where that you could have new countries or whatever it turns out to be,
Right.
what you got to do in that kind of process is you got to get your head out into at least the leading edge of where
Yeah.
present technology seems to be going. And in this particular case, there's a place not too far in the distance where you get projection holography to where you get three-dimensional kind of things. And so it's not like you're sitting there looking at screens all the time. It's like you can project into a space all this
Right.
dimensionality and you can start to replicate aspects of the physical interaction and that we have on a day-to-day basis. And so there's a real interesting kind of transitional space in here.
Yeah, there is. And that really, that is part of the process of teaching us what we are capable of. We always envision it first in the technology. It's like we're picturing it, and then we build it, we engineer it, and then we become it.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful process, and that process of engineering different kinds of technology, that information flows out across the entire cosmos. Everything in the cosmos is interacting and reacting to every single thing that is being
Yeah, yeah.
so
To
yeah,
some degree or another. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you're just a little, a single individual, you might not get a whole lot of reaction, but you start putting minds together and energies together. Oh wow, there's a
Well,
big
that's the essence, the essential kind of process that
yeah,
is behind what we're thinking about, and that is that to get to this new world, what you need to do is get a whole bunch of people who are entrained and thinking about the same thing and starting to build the
yeah.
imagery in their mind about what this world and the structural, procedural, other kind of aspects of how this new world could work. And you don't have to do it down to to a granular level. You need to get to just to the place where you've got the basic structure and the internal consistency and other things, and then everybody starts to do their own thing and build on it and so on, and so it takes off. But it's taking off in a direction that everybody agreed was really useful and well.
I
So
know, I know. And that is actually one of the, there's a group that I visited once or twice out of body. There's never any proof for any of this stuff, you guys. You have to get to the point where your consciousness is inspired by some other consciousness. But this was a group that um, they went to another dimension in order to avoid some of the wars that were
yeah.
happening, and they realized, well, we survived, but we have nothing. And they immediately started with, okay, what do we need today? And that evolved into a focus on we absolutely need have to develop our science. And I love that model. They started developing the science, and they have technology that is mind-blowing. And it's a small group. It isn't a big group, but they are focused. They are together. They all live in one particular area. They don't interact with us too much, but they do interact with us.
Mm.
And their focus has been, we need technology that will allow us to continue to evolve in an extraordinary direction. So they're part of that humanoid family that is still physical and really moving in a direction. They're a step ahead, a little step ahead, but that's where the bulk of us, where I would like to see us go. So,
Well, I hope that you'll talk more about that when you come to be with us in Transition
yeah,
Talks
okay.
here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, just 100 miles from Washington and Baltimore. And that'll be in June. What day is it?
14th, I think
14th.
14th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's Saturday,
yeah,
whatever that Saturday is.
Right.
And we promise you a really good time if you come here. But again, you can plug into the live stream, and you can watch it in bed in your pajamas if you want, or some of the yeah. And
Okay.
so we're really looking forward. Thank you, Penny. This is going to be
Yeah.
a good time, and
Yep.
you can find out all the information about this at transitiontalks.org, or at the main website, which is arlingtoninstitute.org. And we'll see you in the not too distant future, about 6
Yeah.
weeks.
Okay. Very good. Looking forward to it. Come
Yeah.
join us, everybody.
Yeah,
It's
thank you.
always a good time and very interesting. So.
Thanks so much. See you.